I'm here at a place for a thing, and I'm here with Gordon from PCWorld. Thank you. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to go see all kinds of really cool stuff, but before that, we've got some time because it's not quite Zen 4:30. And if you saw his video, I already did that joke, so it's fine. It's totally fun. I don't know. It's a lot of fun. You're going to install Linux, and you're going to let me know how that goes. That's going to be exciting.
Because I've downloaded it, the distro you've recommended,
Pop OS.
Pop OS, and I need to isolate a machine to do it. Because just to fill you in, I've not run Linux since the late 90s.
That's probably okay.
And I'm interested to try it again. I've done a couple, Mint ISO boots just to mess around. But I'm interested in doing it because you sold me in the video the last time we talked that, that essentially the community for Linux is like out to better humans, right? So
It'll be around for a while.
I really kind of like that idea. People are just doing work just to do work. So I want to try it, and I'm wondering if I could my plan is to get a machine up and running and then try to just use it as a main desktop for a while, except for my gaming.
Yeah, it's good at what it's good at. It's not great at what it's not good at, but it's a good, fun experience probably.
Yeah, and I do wonder, because everybody always screams about Linux, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I think a lot of people always scream about Linux where they scream about going to Canada because they're angry about Windows 11 making you have an account. So I'm going to run Linux. Most people never go through that threat.
Yeah,
because it's like whenever they threaten to move to Canada, I kind of wonder if maybe it's time, because sometimes it would just be good to try something. Going all the way back even further, again to the 1990s, I had a BOS machine.
Oh, those were nice.
A dual P2400. It was pretty awesome. And it was unfortunate that, honestly, Apple didn't pick that as the OS, because I think it
probably would have turned out better.
It probably would have turned out better in some ways, right?
Steve Jobs next. No!
Yeah, don't you remember? Because people really were expecting to possibly be the successor on the Mac platform, and
it didn't work out that way. No.
I know because Linux is the only thing that has sort of survived the Alt OS kind of phase. There are many different alternate OS, and I guess you could say Mac, but that's different. They've always been pretty mainstream.
Apple's also put gazillions and gazillions of dollars into it. Any version of Linux that's had gazillions and gazillions of dollars put into it has also survived in some way or another. Android. But Google's even trying to get away from the Linux kernel so that they can sort of keep their own thing, the Fuchsia OS thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it because it's just too hard to manage software that is owned by a committee, or?
I think Google has very specific things that they need to accomplish, and Linux's goals are more sort of general purpose. And so it's not that the Linux people are unwilling to work with Google, it's that Google has to work with the kernel in such a way that their changes would benefit the community at large, and they're just kind of seem like they don't want to deal with that.
God, there are so many. The thing about Linux is it very much mirrors similar societal goals.
Yeah.
And if you can imagine a society where people pitch in just to make things better, fix it. If there's something broken, they're going to fix it because they just want to fix it, because that's for better for mankind, right? No society has ever survived with those goals, except in science fiction.
Yeah.
Except in the 24th century for Star Trek. But that's
they never explain how they got there. It's just like, we're here now. This is how it works. And
that's a good question, though. Did the Enterprise run Linux?
How did we get there?
Was that basically because the Federation very much, it wasn't about monetizing and controlling intellectual property. There were no intellectual property rights in the 24th century.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's pretty much true. It's like, this is my research and this is the stuff that I do. So I didn't really portray it that way.
And you could go to the replicator and say, T Earl Grey. And you could probably say, make Radeon, 8, and it would just make it. And there would be or you could.
I've never heard anybody ask for San Marzano tomatoes.
Could you, just the replicator never said no, somebody owns the intellectual property, this is closed, we can't duplicate. So, isn't Star Trek basically Linux, the view of Linux is very much the 24th century view in the Federation, yeah?
It's the analogy that I always hear is that it's kind of like infrastructure. community plumbing. Sometimes that's really unglamorous. Sometimes it's described as like the Roman aqueducts. Like who really at this point owns the aqueducts? Who really owns the Roman roads? And then long after Rome fell, the roads were still useful.
Yeah, no, because as the thing is, it's design, closed software, closed hardware all goes away because you have no access to the source code. So having it in the open means.
And at a macroscopic level, is like the Roman aqueducts are so enduring because they didn't know how else to build it. If they built it any other way, it would crumble in a not useful lifetime. And so it's like, okay, we'll build it as good as we possibly can build it. Today, we could build buildings that will last 1,000 years, but economically, we figured out how to build buildings that will last exactly as long as the loan is amortized for. So it's like, this building will be completely worthless in 30 years.
I do wonder because new housing is not built the way they used to. But I mean, but the thing about Linux is it's actively always being supported now. So like it would be as though whoever built aqueducts,
We're still around.
their ears would continue to have worked on them.
And the history is maybe a little bit better, so we know why they did certain things the way that they did, which is maybe useful for the next people that have to come and build something. And the open source license also kind of builds in that sort of social contract. It's like, okay, you're going to use the knowledge from the temple in order to solve your current problem, but whatever knowledge you gain, you also have to share with the temple so that it may benefit future generations.
I see this is exactly the attraction. Now I am serious. I've run Microsoft Windows basically for the last few decades because apparently I'm selfish, and I really don't want to think like I'm a selfish person, but yeah, it's just simply I buy this now, I use it, I buy you get rid of it, you buy the new one, but this is what is really working for me on the Linux thing because you're just sort of like buying into the greater good of it all,
It's not an exclusive thing either. So like for me, the files that I have that go back 20, 30 years, I have moved from distro to distro to distro, but it's like a once every 5 to 7 year operation and not I've got a bad Windows update. Now I have to reinstall and pull my files back down and redo things. I can sort of count on the machine at home that has my backups and my media files and vacation photos and tax documents and whatever else that I've collected over the last 30 years. I can sort of trust that it's never going to do anything strange in a way that I have never been able to trust any other operating system.
It feels like the future is going to be, Linux, and then everybody else, on your, private enterprise operating systems.
There have been a lot of problems. I think Amazon actually is probably the best example of embracing open source, adding it to their services, and then a lot of friction shows up. So they adopted like Elasticsearch, I think is the most recent one. They use the open source Elasticsearch thing, but then they offer Elasticsearch services, so you don't have to configure your own Elastic. You can just give them money, and they'll do it, and it's cheap, and that's less headache than trying to DIY it. But then the learnings and benefit and all the stuff from scaling that doesn't really go back to benefit the people working on Elasticsearch who do so for, they earn their living that way. It's not just giving it away. And so Amazon sort of ended up forking it because, Amazon's side of it is like something along the lines of we couldn't get our goals to align with the project leadership goals for what Elasticsearch should be. And there's probably some truth to that. But on the Elasticsearch side, it was, well, Amazon is learning all this cool stuff about how to scale our product and they're not sharing it, so what do we do? That's kind of the microcosm for what you're talking about with Google and everybody.
It is, because I mean, honestly, I don't think the Romans originally built those aqueducts for like everybody to benefit, right? They were not built to help everybody.
Yeah,
so.
They were built to get the army from A to B very quickly.
And like, oh yeah, this is so great, I get to move and I kind of wonder if and this is maybe the cynical nature of me, I just like, how do you survive? Because when you have the masses of Google, Microsoft, and Apple, the money behind, and Oracle, and all these companies, that it's in their best interest to have control of things. And the entire philosophy of Linux is it's community. It's really, that beauty of it that really, I didn't think about it until you brought that up. It's like, it's about community, and now.
Yeah, it's not easy to survive in those scenarios. I mean, programmers need to eat and they need to earn a living, and most programmers can earn a very good living working for one of those companies, lavish even, depending on what part of the world you're in.
Right. So how does it survive long term then? I mean, isn't it just turned into?
I think that because it has survived so far, it's probably going to continue to survive, because I think it would have had a much more adverse time in the 90s and 2000s, and that's when it sort of, somebody recognized and said, hey, we need to be able to run our computers with software that isn't completely controlled by a third party. It's like, it doesn't matter that the patent expires in 20 years. If we have to reverse engineer all this stuff, it's basically going to be a brick. And so enough people sort of see that to keep it going. But is it as good of an experience from, you know, like a normal user standpoint? No, not really.
Right.
But someday it might be.
Yeah, and then again, I think to me the thing is like, if you're a responsible person and you believe in, you know, being a functioning member of society that is contributing, then you're supporting that rather than simply being selfish and running a closed operating system like I have for all these years.
I guess what I'm saying is that you shouldn't have to feel that way. I'm not asking you to feel that way.
No, you're not.
It's fine.
But you know, when you brought that up, I really thought like, you know, really like, yeah, it's a great goal to like shoot to support, you know, just this openness, open society, and then supporting basically old hardware.
Maybe on the other side of the coin, when I'm subscribed to Amazon or Netflix or something like that for media, I've also got my DVD collection backed up on my home server, and it's like, I don't really own this. And it's like, I guess technically, I don't know if I really own my DVDs. That's a little bit of a Pandora's box. But I know that the media files that I have on my machine aren't going to stop working one day. I know that Amazon is not going to reach in and delete the book because they've lost the license or whatever. And I also really like that there's something that exists to do that. That's sort of a critical function for society, I think.
Right. It's just simply, instead of having it all vanish like that.
Right.
It's enduring. But, and I again, like everybody, if you live in the 24th century, you like, oh, the Federation's wonderful. It's about, you know, exploring space and helping others.
I think that's our cue.
That's our cue. But you know what? If you're a Ferengi and you're living in a mansion, that is way better than that like Federation supplied little tiny apartment building. So
Linux is fun. I don't know. Thanks, Gordon. Where can they find PCWorld?
Go to PCWorld's channel, click and subscribe and smash the bell. And of course, thank you for having me.
Like, comment, subscribe. We'll catch you later.